Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to take a moment for everyone to log in and join the call. So we'll start in about 30 seconds. Yeah. Thank you so much to those of you who also tuned in last month. We had a great discussion and demo on asset management and some of the emerging vulnerabilities. Yeah, this month we're really excited. We got a fun discussion in store for you guys with the SOC 2 compliance. I know Solomon has some fun stuff going on the demo. But before we get into that exciting discussion, though, let's give a quick introduction of myself and fellow panelist Solomon. So for this webinar, we want to keep it as interactive as possible. Please take a moment, use the Q&A feature. Let us know if there's anything specific you're looking for out of this webinar. Obviously, we can tailor this demo as we go. If you're looking for something a little more technical, or if you're actually looking for a different compliance standard than SOC 2, which is what we're focusing on here, we can also kind of spin it out and look into that as well. So just drop us a note in the Q&A box. We'll be sure to answer it all during this session. Hey, Solomon, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a really interesting background and some hands-on security work at IBM and Oracle. And now you're here at Uptycs. So why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Jeremy. My name is Solomon Murungu. As Jeremy said, I'm a solution engineer here at Uptycs. I've been with Uptycs for just over a year. And prior to that, I worked at Oracle on the database and security products. And I also worked at IBM, where I supported the Guardian database and compliance product. Happy to be here, and looking forward to sharing with you what Uptycs has in the compliance space. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much, Solomon. That was a great introduction. I'll give you guys a quick introduction about myself. So I'm a technical product marketer here at Uptycs. Prior to Uptycs, I worked at Deloitte, focusing on day-to-day security operations and systems engineering, more government clients. And in my spare time, I enjoy playing and watching soccer. So now let's take a look at the agenda we have for today. So we have a really exciting session, and I'm really excited to go over this with you. A few housekeeping items before we get into it, though. This webinar is expected to go around 35 to 45 minutes. There will be an open Q&A at the end, but we want to keep it interactive. So please keep asking questions as they come in. Let us know what you're looking for out of this, and we'll be sure to address it. So we just finished the introductions. Thank you to Solomon. Next on the agenda, we'll move on to the key insights. So we observed a few of these key insights when talking with practitioners about their specific pain points with SOC 2. And we wanted to give you those insights early on so you can keep seeing them appear throughout the rest of the demo and discussion. So then we'll move into our discussion of how to simplify SOC 2 compliance and also break down what SOC 2 objectives are at their core. Then we'll move ahead to give a very brief overview of some of the Uptycs solution areas before getting into more of the fun stuff with the live demo led by Solomon. So we left time at the end for the open Q&A, but like I said a few times already, please use the Q&A box. Let us know kind of along the way what you're looking for, and we'll be happy to answer it. So for the key insights here, we had some really great conversations with practitioners. And the first thing we observed was that SOC 2 compliance is great for building trust. And building that customer and brand trust specifically, and that the business brand aspect of SOC 2 is almost as important a piece of why companies are going with SOC 2 compliance as the technical controls that they put in place. So using SOC 2 to maintain and build that customer trust is vital, and it's viewed as a necessary part of the buying process these days. A customer's willingness to engage with you is often based around that trust model. The second piece we're seeing here is about simplifying SOC 2 in dynamic environments. So SOC 2 has a lot of ambiguity, and we'll get into that ambiguity in a minute. But around its requirements and implementation, this complicates things in your IT ecosystem when you become more complicated, more stretched, and you build out. So one thing to note here is that when you have a diverse, extended enterprise environment, you want to simplify your process as much as possible to reduce as much noise as possible. And on the topic of reducing noise, I think this last point on alert fatigue will probably resonate with a lot of you. This last point is probably the most important in terms of actual actionable steps, which involves building a good alert management program and ensuring that you're getting the right feedback. So here we wanted to make sure that you're not getting overwhelmed with alerts, and also that any information coming in through an alert comes with that right context to give you the next steps of resolving the problem area. In the next slide, I want to move into the discussion and talk about 3 areas of concerns that was brought up when practitioners were looking to actually implement SOC 2. So for the first one is the most tied in with the business side. And it's the relationship between SOC 2 and customer and brand trust. So we touched on this a little bit on the last slide, but it's really important nowadays to build that brand loyalty and trust. So how do you actually go about doing that? One of the ways is using the SOC 2 certification to prove you're equipped to handle customer data. And honestly, frankly, that you're prioritizing safeguarding data as a top initiative. The next item of concern is about dealing with increasingly extended assets and unpredictable end users. The problem here is that most organizations face is that as your enterprise grows, you lose the ability to comprehensively track your assets, your rules, your resources. So an extension of that is it becomes harder to remediate items as they become non-compliant. So when you have thousands of devices, you may be getting thousands of alerts. And if you don't have the contextual guidance right there for you, you might struggle to fix any non-compliant systems. So this kind of moves itself into the final point, which is the final point of concern is this dichotomy between SOC 2 being viewed as a security standard versus a service standard. And what we mean by that, you might be saying, okay, well, what does it mean between service versus security? We mean that some compliance standards have these rigid technical security requirements that are required of your organization from a security perspective. But SOC 2 is a little more ambiguous and open to interpretation in terms of how to meet those standards. So for one organization, it may mean implementing stricter firewall or MFA rules. While for another organization, it may mean increasing physical security at your data center. So SOC 2 is made up of 5 trust service categories, and I believe security is only one of those 5. And the other 4 are focusing on, I believe, processing integrity, privacy, confidentiality, and availability. So you can already see how this all ties in holistically to security, but the core values of the SOC 2 framework are very customer data driven. And that ambiguity can cause a pain point where teams get nervous about their SOC 2 compliance and where it falls in that terms of service versus security. So now that we talked about these pain points, let's move on to looking at simplifying some of these pain points and proactively managing your compliance posture. So the first thing we want to address here is just one of the simple tenets of modern security, and that's that assets need to be mapped and tracked to stay compliant. Assets that kind of live in that black void of your IT ecosystem are not being addressed. And this means shifting from a point in time audit perspective to instead one that's more of a continuous improvement process. So compliance used to be viewed as a point in time audit where we know on May 13th, we were fully compliant in auditing these systems. But instead what we need nowadays is the first step is kind of taking that tracking and tracking your resources and what controls or rules you're implementing to achieve the compliance standard. Especially so with a standard like SOC 2 that has that ambiguity, tracking the reasoning behind your controls you're going to want to implement is a really important first step. So how do you actually go about maintaining that compliance? You implement 2 things. And I think the first one we want to talk about here is alert management. So we talked about this on the key insights page, but it's all about reducing noise in your environment and prioritizing specific assets. So no one wants to go through alert fatigue. No one wants to go through thousands of alerts every day. I certainly don't. Hopefully you don't either. And the important thing here is about setting up your alerts so you understand priority and are testing these alerts to ensure you're capturing the use cases you specifically are hunting for. And then when you do get an alert, you want to extend that out and have it be contextual. So one of the main things we're really proud of here at Uptycs is we have really rich contextual guidance in every single asset we're looking at. Solomon's going to give a great overview of this in a minute. But when you see a specific asset or a group of resources not fulfilling SOC 2 compliance, you can click on it and immediately get an evidence report for why it is or is not failing that rule set. And then you can take that evidence and immediately act to fix it. So what we at Uptycs are doing here is not just telling you, hey, there's a problem. We're looking at it and we're taking it one step further to show you how to fix that problem. And I think that's the step that most teams need to take. So if you're incorporating these 3 policies and kind of tangible action items into your compliance process, we really do feel that you just become more equipped to not only implement a SOC 2 framework, but easily maintain that over time. So that was our discussion and our quick overview of SOC 2 pain points and kind of how to simplify some areas around continuous monitoring of SOC 2. If you had any specific questions there, definitely drop us a note and I'll be sure to answer it. Or if you just wanted to chat after, definitely let me know. But before moving into the live demo, Solomon and I just wanted to share a quick overview of what all Uptycs can do for you. So if there's anything in these domains you want to learn more about and we don't get the chance to cover, please let me know in the Q&A and definitely reach out after. So here you can see that Uptycs provides visibility for the Monitor Defender. We're a cloud-native security analytics platform, and we provide coverage for the cloud and endpoint asset categories. The solution provides a unique telemetry-powered approach to address multiple use cases, as you can see here. This includes, starting on the right side, the extended detection and response. So this is more about those enhanced insights and visibility into your assets. The cloud workload protection platform to secure your hosts, your VMs, your containers, maybe your micro VMs as well. And then also the piece that we're going to focus on a little more today, the cloud security posture management piece, to simplify and ensure compliance in the cloud. So obviously today we're focusing more on that compliance piece, but you'll see a glimpse in how the Uptycs platform quickly enables people to get a good sense of their cloud usage and cloud security posture. If there's anything outside of these domains that you want to talk about, definitely let us know, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. Without further ado though, Solomon, I'll turn it over to you and walk us through the live demo.
Excellent.
So I stop sharing now. Definitely let you know when it pops up.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen now. Let me know when you can see it.
Perfect. I can see it great.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeremy, for that introduction. I'll just sort of dovetail on the security analytics platform that you just started. What you're seeing here on the screen is the homepage for the Uptycs security analytics platform. As Jeremy mentioned, we are collecting data from endpoints and cloud environments using several sensors. In particular, for endpoints, we're using OS Query, which collects, host configuration and event data and brings it into our platform. We do the same thing for cloud environments where, we do an integration with OS with Cloud Query, and then we collect cloud resource telemetry, and again, bring that into our platform. As the data comes in, we are applying, various rules to detect if there are any changes that, might, compromise the system from, from a compliance standpoint. And then we're also using the data to, to surface, various use cases. In particular, we're doing audit and compliance, as well as being able to do, detection and response, so we can alert you if there is anything that has happened. From a compliance standpoint, I'm just going to go ahead and share what what we're able to do in addition to the alerts that we generate. From a configuration standpoint, we are able to provide coverage for various compliance standards, as you can see here, from ISO to FedRAMP, CIS, as well as Uptycs generated compliance frameworks that are basically best practice for for the different operating systems that that are out there. And then of course we've got NIST, PCI, as well as DISA, and for today's conversation we're going to focus primarily on SOC 2. And really, we've made it very easy for our customers to be able to adopt these, these frameworks. As you can see here, we've got, the coverage for the 3 different operating systems. We show you, the source of the framework, the version, the number of checks, and we also give you the ability to be able to actually, download the entire framework as a CSV, so you can, make some, modifications or make any changes. But for today's demo, I'm just going to, take one of these compliance frameworks and do a clone on it.
So essentially what we're able to do here, Solomon, right, is when we clone it, we're taking kind of the base rule set that Uptycs provides you, and then you can kind of modify that how you want, depending on if you're using a certain control or rule set.
Exactly. Again, this provides, tremendous flexibility in the sense that, for, various industries, various organizations, there may be some, some controls that are not applicable to them. So just, providing that flexibility so that they can go to the base clone the base and save the configuration and modify it such that it is something that's applicable for their environment.
Nice. And what are some of the rules that we provide for SOC 2?
We provide all kinds of rules. I'm just going to take, for example, to answer your question, Jeremy. I'm going to take this this control this framework that I just cloned, and as you can see, providing all the details in terms of where the control comes from, the versions, and so on. If I go ahead and edit this, you notice that here I can take one of these controls and actually edit it and see exactly what we are doing to implement that control. Again, we have a preamble that basically specifies the validity of the control, with its title, and the fact that it is scored.
Yeah.
And then further down here, we're describing what it is that we are trying to accomplish with this particular control.
And is the language from that description and the rationale, is that taken from SOC 2, or where is the source of that language?
No, it comes directly from from SOC 2.
Oh, perfect. So you can map between what controls we're giving you in the framework to actually say, okay, this is actually meeting the control from this section of SOC 2.
Absolutely, and that's really important because if you're a compliance engineer and you want to be able to prove to your auditors that you are actually implementing the framework is defined by the authority, then this is the evidence that you can provide that here's what here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's what we're doing to make sure that the control is implemented, and if there's any issue, here's the remediation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think it's a good bridge between kind of the policy language and also the technical language, is what we're seeing right here.
Exactly. And then we specify exactly where the rule is coming from, and as I mentioned earlier, different organizations have different requirements. For example, password rotation. Some people want it to be done after so many days, maybe 60 days. Some organizations say 90 days. The same thing applies to things like your password length. Some people want it to be 9 characters long, some people want it to be 14 characters long, so we give you the ability to do parameterization. Again, these are all really very important things for for compliance managers to be able to demonstrate to their auditors that they are actually complying with that, along with the flexibility that we provide by allowing customers to actually modify these controls. So, okay, so now once this control has been defined, we can apply the framework to a particular asset. And in this environment, have been a lot of assets that have been that have different frameworks assigned to them. And over here, we provide a sort of like a visual to quickly be able to see, for example, SOC 2 for Mac, what's compliant and what is not compliant. The same thing for Linux environment, and then of course I have various frameworks already implemented here. So we provide a very easy way for you to actually go in and see what your compliance posture looks like. Just going to focus here on SOC 2 for Mac OS. And so here on the right hand side, we're providing sort of like a graph to show you how compliant we've been over time. One of the most important things is today compliance is no longer something that you do just on a single point in time. As Jeremy mentioned, this is something that you have to do on a continuous basis. And here by default, we're showing what the compliance was over a 7-day period, but we can also show the same thing over a 30-day period as well as on a 90-day period.
Nice, and that's because we store the data right in our historical flight recorder. Maybe we can talk about that for a second as well.
Yeah, absolutely. as I mentioned, when we get all this, data, whether it's, asset or cloud resource configuration data, or event data, we're keeping this data for up to, 97 days, historical flight recorder. So we have the ability to be able to go back. So if somebody says, I want to know what your posture was, at the point in the past, we have the ability to say, I want to see what my posture was, say, from, the 2nd of November to today, for example. And then I can, apply those dates, and then I can, get precisely what the posture was. And we feel that this is, a very powerful tool to be able to compliance engineers, so that they can go and demonstrate to, the auditors that, they're staying compliant.
Yeah, and I think that's also useful because you can kind of see over time, say you took an action on November 5th and you tried to push out a patch or you tried to implement a new firewall rule, you can immediately see how that implemented or kind of changed your compliance standard by percentage of, okay, this many assets now became compliant or fell out of compliance because of that action. So it's really like when you're looking backwards at it, a really powerful tool in that sense also.
Absolutely. And then again, Jeremy, down here we are showing, this is now by, specific standard, for the MAC assets, that we have here, which standard passed and which standard failed.
So for this one, it's more of a actual rule. So it looks like the top left is about kind of percentage of overall asset fleet. The top right graph is more over time. And then this bottom one that we're looking at, the bar chart, is actually how much we're completing of each rule that we've created for SOC 2, right?
That is precisely correct.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And we can drill in and see, like, where the failures have happened and where the passes are. And in our environment, it's sort of like to have, some failures, so that we can, we can demonstrate various capabilities of the product. In this particular case, there's one that, that has a failure. Again, one of the things that we provide, right in the product, it's not just, the control. We provide the evidence, the command that we ran, and again, if there's a failure, we also provide the remediation, which I think is very, very important. So as a compliance engineer, you don't have to, go and look somewhere else and say, gee, what do I need to do? All you need to do is actually build right here in the product.
Yeah, wow, no, that's awesome. And it's crazy how quickly we can go from kind of that macro view of our environment of we have X% of our assets in compliance or out of compliance, to really drilling down into specific rule sets or specific assets, and then seeing, okay, how do we actually fix this on an asset by asset basis? So no, that's really interesting.
Absolutely. And again, Jeremy, I think, our platform approach to everything, making sure that, the user doesn't really have to leave the platform to go and look for information. I think that's reflected, in many ways, from the point of view that, we have so many asset categories, and there's just one area like compliance, all the different compliance frameworks are defined here, and as well as all the remediation steps that, one has to take. So, that's a, great point you just mentioned. So in addition to that, if you're a compliance engineer, you're also interested in, what it is that's not, compliant in your environment. The whole point of, running these compliance checks is so that you know what's not compliant, so you can actually, go and, make some remediation. And here we're just summarizing, from a standard standpoint, which one has got the highest number of, or which one has got, how many, failures. And then, of course, the failed rules. And then, of course, here, we're looking at, assets in the, in the fleet, to make sure that we can actually, either contact the user and say, hey, you need to be able to make, changes in your environment. And then finally, to just be able to see what the changes are over time. This is very important from the point of view that, if you're making some, positive changes, then, you're going to get a trend, that's sort of, pointing in a positive direction. And as I mentioned, in our environment, these are sort of like, static environment. We just like to be able to, to have some, some non-compliant assets as well.
Yeah, and I like that layered approach. I think this screen is pretty powerful in the sense that, like, looking at the top left, you can kind of see that overview of your entire ecosystem. What rules or standards are failing. Then you can kind of dig in a little more on the top right of saying, okay, what compliance rules themselves? Is it more of the SSH rules? Is it more of the firewall rules? What are we focusing on here that we need to implement a little better? And then if you want to get even more granular, the bottom left shows you the specific assets. So it's kind of this layered approach of where are you trying to look at and what are you trying to dig into? And just immediately you can see what you need to do.
Absolutely, Jeremy. And again, one of the things that the platform provides, in many ways, is flexibility. We run these compliance checks, twice a day, but different organizations might have, different reasons to run them, at different times. So here we provide the ability to be able to define a schedule so that you can run, the compliance checks at the schedule that's applicable to you. We also provide the ability to be able to do an on-demand scan. Let's say at a particular point in time, we're going to be able to just go ahead and run a scan. Give you, ability to do that. And finally, whenever you are running these compliance checks, you may know that there's a particular machine that's always going to, fail a particular framework, or there's a machine that was in the fleet and it's no longer there, and therefore we just need to be able to make an exception for that. We give the ability to be able to do an exception as well. So this is the compliance from an endpoint standpoint. We also provide compliance for our cloud assets, and I'm just going to go over and show you what that looks like.
Perfect. Yeah, I saw a couple of questions came in asking about if we could dig into the CSPM side, some more of that cloud space as well. So this is a perfect transition.
Fantastic. So as you can see, the sort of the look and feel of the cloud compliance is very similar to our endpoint. That's also very important because, if you're somebody who is, managing the Uptycs platform, the look and feel is going to be very important. And again, this is all happening on the same platform. You're not, looking at two different products. And the data and the backend analytics that we're doing is all happening on the same platform because, data for cloud and endpoint has been normalized and stored in our backend. Again, here.
Oh, one question I had, I saw came in was, we talked about the OS query agent for the
Yes.
first point on endpoint, but a question came in asking about how we actually ingest the data for the cloud space. So maybe we can talk about that API side of things.
Yes. So for the cloud, we start with an integration, right? You check your in this particular case, your AWS account, and we have a process where you can go through and do cloud integration. It's really very easy. We just do either Terraform or a cloud formation template to your account, and then we run the template and get a role that allows Uptycs to actually go ahead and read configuration telemetry data on the resources that are in that environment. And once that integration happens, then now we have visibility into all those assets up in the cloud, and then we can start collecting telemetry from them and bringing that telemetry into the environment. As you can see, we've quite significant coverage for for assets that are in the cloud. Of course, once we get these, as we're getting changes in CloudTrail, looking at events that are happening, people making changes to S3 buckets, instances being created, all that data is coming in, and we're applying those analytics to to alert you that an S3 bucket has changed permissions that that might compromise it. So those are some of the things that that we're doing. then again, going back to the compliance component, once everything has been integrated, we've got all these different rules that we're applying, and again, this is part of that good hygiene, audit and compliance for all the different services that we have. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we have all the the different standards that we are applying to all the assets that are in the environment. Of course, we're doing CIs as well as SOC 2. And again, I mentioned flexibility. We are running this at predetermined intervals, but you can go in and actually make changes to say I want to be able to run much faster or much more frequently or less frequently, and you have the ability to be able to actually go and enable, disable various various controls, as well as add your own control.
So these rules we're looking at here would kind of map back to the same rules that we'd looked back on the endpoint side. Obviously, they would be tailored a little bit more for the cloud space, but this is kind of where we would see our SOC 2 rules and control set, right?
Yes, as you can see in here, the detection. These are more of the compliant. The detections will appear in the event rules. This is another important part is because not only are we running this compliance frameworks, but as the data is coming in, we are also looking at that data and making sure that we can determine whether or not there is something the user should know something that is anomalous. And as you can see over here, we've got cloud specific, or we've got we're covering the different operating systems, obviously, and then for public cloud, we have some very specific, cloud-centric, detection rules that we are applying, so that we can, and again, surface the different lists that that are centric to to the cloud.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful because we talked about it in the discussion. And I know you and I have talked about it with some of practitioners as well, is that the alert management piece is always kind of a difficult piece to nail, but once you nail it, it's so powerful. And being able to make sure that you tailor your environment and the amount of work it takes to tailor your environment to give you the right alerts and give you that contextual alert as well. So I think this detections piece is a really powerful piece, especially on that continuous compliance side of things. And you can kind of already see just how interactive it is and how much variability you can put into your alerts and detection side.
I mean, that's a very good point, Jeremy. I think the flexibility that that we provide in the platform, from the point of view that you can you can create your own rules, you can configure the different frameworks the way you want. Just gives the customers a lot of flexibility, and then again going on the alerts. And being able to see what the different alerts that are being generated, as well as detections that we generate to to sort of minimize the amount of sort of alert fatigue that that customers might have. So it all makes it very, very easy to to manage.
Yeah, no, that looks amazing. Yeah. And it looks really powerful too. Like you can kind of cover so many of your different assets in one single pane of glass. We looked at the endpoint side of things. Now we're looking at the cloud side of things, and it's all synthesized together, which is really important.
Yes, definitely. And again, Jeremy, sort of coming back to, cloud compliance here, as I mentioned, the look and feel is the same. The idea of, having, a trendy graph to showcase, what has been happening over time, emphasize that, continuous compliance mindset is really very important. And again, here, just like in the endpoint, we're able to really give details on the, compliant, non-compliant status of your environment. Again, as you can see, by each individual control in the framework, so that you can, can sort of zoom in and sort of say, this is an area that I want to, to actually focus on.
Yeah.
And, it makes it very easy for, customers and partners to, to ensure that, they have a good posture.
Yeah, no, that ability to drill down is really powerful because it's easy to say, hey, there's something wrong. But the hard part is kind of giving you that contextual guidance along with the alert. And I think that's the piece that we're adding here is we give you that evidence and we give you that guidance to say, hey, not only is there something wrong, but let's take a look at it and here's how you're going to fix it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jeremy, I'm going to stop here for a moment and see if there are any questions that we need to address.
Yeah, I did see one actually, if you wanted to talk about maybe some Yara rules. So someone asked about incorporating Yara rules with detections or compliance. And I was curious, I know that we have some good integrations with Yara and kind of the ability to leverage that. Maybe you could speak to that for a minute.
Yes. So I'm going to use, one of the assets that I've got integrated into this environment. Again, at Uptycs, one of the most powerful features of our platform is the depth and richness of the telemetry that we collect. And we also have this idea, say from a compliance standpoint, we provide an interface that allows you to demonstrate to know data that your asset is compliant. For example, you may want to sort of demonstrate that you're not running an Oracle database in your environment, or you're not running a MySQL database. You can come in here and use this file real-time actions to be able to to demonstrate that. But when it comes to things like Yara, again, we can use this interface to say, hey, I want to be able to look at the file and see whether or not there is anything anomalous in that environment. Either you can carve the file or you can just do an ad hoc Yara rule. In this particular case, I looked at the Etsy host file and can apply a Yara rule there to see if a particular signature exists in that file. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. We can run that Yara rule. It's going to go ahead and run. It's not going to find any matches. And I'm going to make a change here and change that to 127. And I'm going to do a scan again. It's going to find one match because this is an Etsy host file. And there's always a 127 that IP address was able to find that. But really the power of this ad hoc query, imagine you're in an organization and people are sending you, maybe by email, belong some kind of information sharing association, people sending you, Yara signatures for things that may or may not be in your environment. To be able to go in and run this Yara rule is a very powerful thing to do. And if you build your own Yara group rules, can also kind of keep a library of that and be able to to apply them. So this is a very powerful feature that we provide in the Uptycs platform.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for giving us that walkthrough of actually putting together a Yara rule and showing us how to find one. No, this is really interesting. It's great that you can kind of set this up to kind of scan your entire environment. This is really interesting. I do see that we're at 40 minutes, so I want to transition to just the pure open Q&A. So I'm happy to share my screen and kind of show that slide, or we can stick here. I see a couple questions have come in. Either way, Solomon, do you want me to give you one that maybe you wanted to show the platform a little more on, or do you want me to share?
We're just go by what what our audience wants to do.
Sounds good. So this one was about kind of the CSPM IAM space. So talking a little bit about that alert management of, we see kind of the access management piece of cloud security posture management. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that IAM piece of the CSPM.
Yes, I'm certainly happy to do that. Um, so certainly with so many cloud resources, that are exposed to the internet, your identity and access management becomes, extremely important. So what we do at Uptycs is we analyze your IAM configuration so that we can cover any potential exposure. And in particular, as you can see here, we are looking for excessive permissions that have been, granted to a user, and we want to make sure that there's no possibility of privilege escalation. There is we are looking at all the different risk areas and identifying what the different policies, as well as rendering the same thing from a policy type perspective. And then down here, we're specifying the policy name and whether or not it's something that is defined by the user, whether it's something that's defined by the cloud provider, as well as the users that have those roles. So this gives practitioners a pretty good understanding of who has what privileges and what the potential risks are, so that they can try to mitigate that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hopefully that answered your question. Yeah, no, thanks for giving us that insight. And I think there's a lot here to the access management piece that, we can't touch in a 2-minute question, but definitely if anything was exciting about that, let us know and we're happy to dive into it more. I do see a couple other questions. I'll go ahead and just share my screen again and we can start to wind down. But one of the questions was, what is the difference between SOC 2 type 1 and SOC 2 type 2 reports? So that's a pretty good question. SOC 2 itself can be a pretty confusing space. And there are these SOC 2 type 1 reports, which focus a little more on kind of a point in time policy aspect of, what are you doing to have security processes in place for your organization? Whereas a SOC 2 type 2 report, and once again, the language can be confusing here. The type 2 report is more about how you're effectively implementing those controls, say over an extended period of time, say 6 to 12 months. So whereas type 1 is more policy and rules, type 2 is more kind of implementation piece and providing that evidence side of things. So definitely a good question. Let me see. I see one more on file integrity monitoring. So how does file integrity monitoring come into play with SOC 2 compliance? So that's a good question. And actually something that we do pretty well here at Uptycs is we have a pretty powerful file integrity monitoring solution. And it offers a highly scalable way to detect and then reconcile changes. Say if you're looking at like Mac OS or Linux or Windows endpoints, it's pretty powerful across all 3 of those. So we're good across a diverse set of endpoints here. And then you can kind of tie this in with your audit and compliance reporting to actually prove your file integrity monitoring from that evidence piece as well. So it's definitely something to look into, and I'm happy to talk about that more. We also have some great blog posts and white papers on that file integrity monitoring piece. So that was the final question. If you have anything else, definitely let us know. But if not, Solomon and I put our emails down here below. Definitely reach out. Let us know if there was anything specific that you want to talk about more. But we really enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully you did as well. And thank you so much for joining us today. Hope everyone has a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.